Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Welcome to our online Kashmir Cultural Heritage Awareness Series. Today is our 75th series, and our speaker is Sri Aditya Raj Kaul on Kashmir before and after 370 Abrogation. As mentioned earlier, we will have His Holiness Sri Shankar Vijayendra Saraswati Swamigal appearing in our program, rendering his Anugraha Bhashanam. He's going to bless us with Anugraha Bhashanam during our program today. As Kanjimat camp is at Srikakulam area, Andhra Pradesh, and as they are on the move, we may interrupt the program anytime when His Holiness appears. I want to thank Kanjimat staff for all the arrangements they are making to make this happen. We also want to thank Shabari Sasrigal, Vishnu, and Shankar, his team, who are standing by for Purna Kumbham, our traditional welcome to His Holiness as and when it happens. Now we begin our program with a prayer by Janani Mahalingam. Janani has appeared in our program earlier, an accomplished Carnatic musician and a qualified chartered accountant and associate actuary. She continues her passion for Carnatic music in between working as a consulting actuarial analyst. Janani?
Thank you, Sri V. Shankar, for this opportunity. Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Nichitamu nishchalamu nirmalamani ninne nammi nanu ramani chitamu Nachitamu vanjana chanchalamani nannu vidanadaguni O Rama Nichitamu nishchalamu nirmalamani Gurude chillaginsa Gurude brahmaramu Gurude Bhaskarudu Gurude Bhadrudu Guruni Vanu Kunti Dharanu Dasu Nityagara Juni Nichitamu nishchalamu nirmalamani ninne nammi nanu rama nichitamu.
Thank you, Janani. It was very nice that you could join us today, and see you again next time.
Thank you so much. Pleasure is mine.
We thank Sri Kanchimat for our ongoing Kashmir initiatives and offer our namaskaram to His Holiness Sri Shankar Vijayendra Saraswati Swamigal. Kanchimat has always been in the forefront, modestly working with the sole aim of national integration, spiritual enlightenment, and preserving the uniqueness of Kashmir, as Kashmir is our cultural heritage. We are now very pleased to welcome Sri Aditya Raj Kaul with this introduction. Sri Aditya Raj Kaul is a well-known journalist with over 15 years experience in breaking news situations and media leadership roles. He is the executive director, executive editor of TV9 Network for National Security and Strategic Affairs, where he has launched India's first OTT platform for news documentaries. Kaul began his TV career as principal correspondent with the Times Now, focusing on foreign affairs and breaking news situations. Among some of the top notch coverages and reportage, Kaul reported from Iraq during the peak of ISIS, interviewed Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas in Ramallah on Israel Palestinian conflict, and reported from the nuclear supplies group meet in South Korea. He has traveled extensively across the conflict-ridden state of Jammu and Kashmir and Red Corridor of Moist Terror in Bastar. Earlier, Kaul was a group contributing editor of CNN News 18 and Network 18, one of the first journalists to interview former Afghan Vice President and spy chief Amrullah Saleh after Kabul fell. He also interviewed Antiguan Prime Minister Gaston Browne on Mehul Chowksi escape. Kaul was editor of Strategic Affairs and Internal Security at Business Television India (BTVI), where he anchored his prime-time debate on foreign affairs and national security with prominent voices. As special correspondent with the Sunday Indian, he exclusively interviewed the inaccessible Gujarat Chief Minister. Yes, that was Narendra Modi, Indian Prime Minister presently, and UN designated Chief Commander of terror group Hizbul Mujahideen in Pakistan occupied Kashmir, Syed Salahuddin. Kaul graduated in political science from Ramjas College, Delhi, before completing his master's in journalism from Xavier Institute of Communication, Mumbai. Finally, Kaul was 9 months old when his family met forced exodus in 1990 from their homeland in Kashmir. After escaping to Jammu and living in a garage for weeks, his family moved to New Delhi to rebuild their life from scratch. Um, Mr. Kaul, I thought I'll just share this picture that I got from your Twitter feed. I thought people should see this. Now, you are saying in your Twitter feed, today we complete 33 years in forced exile due to Islamist terror in Kashmir. I was born 9 months before our exodus when the ethnic cleansing began against the minority Hindus. We lost everything, lived in a garage camp in Jammu as refugees before beginning life from scratch. That must have been 1990 January, right?
That's right. Yes.
And January is considered to be the Holocaust of Kashmiri Hindus that month.
Yes, 19 January is in fact the Holocaust Day, the Exodus Day, and the Hindu community from Kashmir marks that every year.
And I identify your mother, Dr. Advaita Vaidini Kaul. She appeared in our program in January 2022 on reflections of Kashmir Saiva mysticism in the walks of Laleshwari. That was a wonderful presentation she made, and we are delighted and very happy that her son is appearing today in our program. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you so much, Shankaraji. In fact, I want to begin by thanking all the organizers, Sri Kanchi Kamakoti Peetham, for the Kashmir cultural heritage awareness that is being done, and in fact also Madhyama Dharma Samajam, and as well as Kanchi Kamakoti Seva Foundation. And but above all, I cannot begin my address before I bow before Shankara Vijayendra Saraswati ji, the Shankaracharya, and in fact, I am very pleased and honored that he would be blessing all of us with his gracious presence, even though he's traveling and he has a very busy schedule and commitment. I also want to begin by saying that I had the rare honor uh, and privilege of seeking blessings from both the Shankaracharyas almost 20 years ago when they were visiting Delhi. And, I bowed before their lotus feet. I was perhaps a teenager at that time and in the early teens. And I think it was somewhere in South Delhi where the temple is. And my father took me there, and they were obviously concerned about situation in Kashmir at that time because the violence and the killings were continuing, and we had the rare honor of seeking their blessings. And before I go to the details of the topic that has been given to me, I will also confess today that I'm someone, I'm immersed in my work. I'm immersed in, mostly in my work. So in Delhi, I usually do not go to temples. We have a huge temple in my, just next to my room. So I sometimes bow towards that, and that does not mean I'm an atheist. I'm very much have faith. But the only time that I visit a temple, and that too regularly, is when I'm in Kashmir. And this is something very rare. It isn't because, I want to go there and, seek something and I have something in my mind. But whenever in the last 10 years that I have gone to Kashmir, and it has been only for work, not for tourism, not for returning home, only purely for work, I have tried to ensure that I visit the Shankaracharya temple, the Adi Shankaracharya temple that is in Srinagar. And there is something divine about it. There is something not just divine, but powerful about it. The moment you take those steps to the temple, the moment you enter the compound of the temple and seek the blessings and finally go to the gufa, the cave where Adi Shankaracharya actually did meditation, you feel complete bliss. You feel a certain kind of oneness. You feel certain kind of awareness, and it is something very pure and divine that cannot certainly be put into words. And I was thinking, I usually do not prepare before I speak because Kashmir is something that which is close to my heart. Of course, I work around it as well, but this is something that we have suffered, we have lived through it, and we will continue to live through it. It is almost like a mission for me, my family, my community. So I do not prepare notes or research about it before I speak. I speak from my heart today. So the topic that has been given to me is very interesting. It is Article 370 before and after, how Kashmir has been doing. And one thing that has been constant, things have changed politically, economically, security wise, perhaps socio-politically and otherwise. But the only thing that is constant and that is watching about Srinagar and in Kashmir is the Adi Shankaracharya temple. Hundreds of temples have been destroyed in Kashmir. Hundreds of murtis and shivlings have been destroyed. They've been flown down the Jhelum and the Dal Lake and other places. Many other important ancient murtis have not been found. Some have been taken away, smuggled out to the west. Even today in Badgam, in South Kashmir, in Pulwama, when there is a construction or a digging happening, many other ancient murtis come out. But one thing is very constant, and this thought came to me just before I entered this conversation, which is Adi Shankaracharya temple. You know, uh, nobody could touch it. It has been there for hundreds of years out there, and even through the peak of terrorism, even through the peak of violence, even through peak of any kind of a change in Kashmir, from kingdoms of different rulers, from the Muslim rule to the Dogra rule, the Sikh rule, and finally a democratic and secular India. Adi Shankaracharya temple has been there very much, blessing us all and perhaps keeping Kashmir safe. And I have this faith in my heart, deep within, that it will continue to be there. Perhaps the purpose of the temple was destined that it will keep a watch from above and keep it safe somehow, even through the most brutal tides that come in the way of history, and continue to bless us, continue to keep our land, our homeland safe, even though, I, my family, my community still stay in exile. But we have this faith that, this temple will continue to guide us. Perhaps someday, if not me, my future generations to return to our holy land. With that, now I'll get on to the basic topic, which is obviously what's been happening in Kashmir.
No,
And
that
I
was a
will
good start. I just wanted to say a few words. Kanjimat has been
please.
closely connected with Kashmir since 1947, from Mahaperiva days. I still remember they were organizing 8 packages sometime after independence, I think October 1947. And starting from 2010, Shankar Jayanti is performed every year. This year also in Jan, we will be sending you an invitation. Please join if you're around. I think it falls on April 25th. So we have the president of our Samajam organizes the functions there at Shankara Hills every year. We have about 100, 150 devotees from Kanchimat go there and then stay for about 10 days.
Right.
So, like you rightly said, this has been very close to Kanchimat, this Kashmir cause, especially Adi Shankara Hills.
Right. And I'll also, begin this again came to my mind that some a positive and a happy news, which is that, one of the dreams of many Kashmiris, and I'm sure several Hindus all across India, has been the Sharda temple, which is in Neelam Valley or the Krishna Ganga in Pakistan occupied Jammu and Kashmir. And it has been my dream as well for many years somehow that, I really want to visit that place and seek the blessings and see, how powerful that, place really is. Unfortunately, that's been ruined. There are just few ruins there, but there is a Sharda committee of Kashmiri Hindus that's been working to revive it. And even though the travel has not been permitted by India or Pakistan at this moment, but we hope that on the lines of Kartarpur and other such initiatives that have been taken by both the governments, there would be some light at the end of the tunnel. But the Sharda committee, following the footsteps of Adi Shankaracharya, has in fact now set up a temple, a Sharda temple in Titwal of North Kashmir, and the inauguration of that temple will be taking place in March this year. And this is something positive and good. We have a ground camp location for the yatra, and if the ground location for the yatra has been set up perhaps after 75 years, now we hope that someday we will be able to go to Sharda across the border in our own land.
No,
So
Ravindra
my
Pandita appeared in our program twice,
I see, wonderful.
and
He's been a
he
very
gives us
committed soldier.
updates.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So something positive to begin with, and let's hope that we all together can, worship and freely travel there and seek blessings. So Kashmir has been a very complicated issue. My own family, as Shankarji mentioned, we met Exodus, a brutal ethnic cleansing, which began perhaps around 87, 88, and culminated in 89 in the most brutal form, where specifically and targeted assassinations of Kashmiri Hindus used to take place. It did not matter, who that Hindu was. It could have been a prominent lawyer, a prominent literary figure, a prominent writer, a prominent judge, who were, selectively targeted for no crime of theirs. Their only crime was they were Hindus in Kashmir and believed that they were Indians first and would stand for the Indian democracy, the Indian constitution, and the Indian flag. Several of our very prominent people, including Tekalal Teplu, uh, and many others, like Sarvanand Kaul Premi, who was a literary figure, and Justice Nilkant Ganju, were brutally killed. And even today, after all these years, 34 years almost, there's been no justice. There's been no FIRs that have been registered. There have been no criminals who have been, punished. And there has certainly been no justice to the entire exodus that happened. And even though we came out from Kashmir in January 1990, and I was just about 9 months old, and our family settled in a garage in Jammu, and many others weren't even as lucky. We still had a garage. There were others who were living in these camps that were provided either by the government or NGOs or others. And for years together, they continued to stay in these camps in absolutely terrible conditions. There was absolute, heat. heat strokes that used to happen. There were scorpion and snake bites that used to happen. So it was physical and mental agony both for the entire Hindu Samaj, Hindu community that had moved out from Kashmir. And I consider myself very lucky that both my parents were very educated, PhDs in history, in Sanskrit, in Buddhism. And that's why perhaps they had this thought that they would try to rebuild their lives from Delhi. And within 3 or 4 months of staying in Jammu in terrible conditions, they decided to challenge themselves and start from scratch in New Delhi. We stayed in a room in Delhi's East Delhi's Shakarpur area, where that room had no windows. For 6 months, we stayed in the most terrible heat of New Delhi. And then slowly they moved on. And my mother was, in fact, that figure in the family who first got a government job on her own merit, without any concessions from the government or any, begging ball that we might have done. We never did that. And solely on her education, on her merit, she got a government job. And my father suffered a eye hemorrhage. He still cannot see from one eye because of the stress and the conditions that were prevalent at that time. And this is perhaps my story, but this is also a story of more than 5 lakh Kashmiri Hindus, Pandits, who actually came out from the valley and had similar conditions. And imagine, my family still came to Delhi and slowly and steadily tried to rebuild their lives. But there were many others, thousands of them, who still remained in Jammu. And I have many friends who, for 2 decades almost, have stayed in most gruesome conditions in camps of Jammu, where they did not get any government support, they did not get any private support. Of course, there's no condition of any international NGOs interfering, because we are not officially declared as either refugees or the internally displaced people. So there was no help from any sides apart from lip service that came in. Minute help for other aids at that point in time. So when I speak about 370, when I speak about changes after 370, I have to first go to what was happening before 370. This is what was happening before 370. Violence was prevalent on the streets of Kashmir. There was absolute terrorism. Yes, Hindus were the main targets initially, but that graduated into even the liberal Muslims being targeted. Muslims who saw themselves as Indians first, Muslims who believed in liberal arts, Muslims who believed in secularism were targeted. And even today, we see some selective targeting of Muslims taking place, because these people, the Pakistan-sponsored terrorists, be it Hizbul Mujahideen, Lashkar-e-Toiba, or Jaish-e-Mohammed, Al-Badr, or many others, they do not see these Muslims as part of their overall jihadi campaign. And this jihadi campaign's aim is to convert Kashmir into an Islamist regime, an Islamist country, with only Sharia law in place, no democracy, no secularism, no rights to the minorities, just as what we see prevalent in Pakistan as well, where minorities, not just the Hindus, Christians, and Sikhs, but also the Ahmadiyas, are targeted in Pakistan day in and day night. So this is how the violence and terrorism really began. And unfortunately, the successive governments in Kashmir, be it of the National Conference, the People's Democratic Party, or even the Congress that came in, did not care much. They were hand in gloves mostly with the radical separatists of Hurriyat Conference, the JKLF, and several other smaller splinter factions. And they continued to watch carelessly as mute spectators, even as continuous bloodlust and bloody violence continued on the streets of Kashmir. Initially, it was just targeted killings and bomb blasts that used to happen. Finally, in the last 2 decades, we saw more of stone pelting happening at the security forces being targeted. Even there were several instances where the Amarnath Yatra, their holy pilgrimage every year, was targeted. The last attack being around 2017, where Gujarati pilgrims, at least I think 9 or 10, were unfortunately brutally killed while their bus was parked near Anantnag of South Kashmir. So 370 was always a special status that was given to Kashmir, and it was a political mistake, a political blunder under which Kashmir was told, the Kashmiris were told that you are special. You're not equal to people all across India. And that is how the ruling political parties of Jammu and Kashmir used to keep New Delhi on ransom. Farooq Abdullah, Mufti, and several others used to come to Delhi and tell New Delhi, no matter which government was in power, be it BJP, Congress, that it's only because of us that Jammu and Kashmir is with India. And the moment you touch us, the moment you touch 370, the moment you do not give us autonomy or self determination or self rule, then there will be complete mayhem, violence. This was a kind of a myth that was given to New Delhi. And unfortunately, I have to say today, that whichever government was in power in Delhi, be it BJP, Congress, left, third front, everyone blindly believed these smaller regional political parties and thought that the moment we touch, the moment we take a very harsh and a practical and a logical step in Kashmir for peace, there might be violence. And yes, some of the concerns might have been genuine. Some of the inputs of the intelligence agencies and the security agencies might have been genuine. But no such historic step could have been taken by New Delhi because they thought that every time they take a step, there will be a bloody violence, and they had no kind of an antidote to this kind of a poisonous spree that had continued over the last 30 years. Now, come to 2019. Since 2012, 2013, I've been going to Kashmir regularly. I've been reporting not just on terror attacks, but also on elections that happened. In fact, in 2014, December, I covered the assembly elections in the peak cold winters of Kashmir, from North Kashmir to Central Kashmir. And there was relative peace. But yes, terrorists had threatened democracy and the election commission that they will not let peaceful polls happen. But what happened in these 30 years, under this gambit of 370, was the women of Kashmir, of Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh, were not given their rights. Do you know that there was a kind of a diktat under the 370 and 35A that if a woman from Kashmir marries anybody from outside, be it anybody outside from any state of India or from abroad, then she loses property rights. She cannot have any property in Jammu and Kashmir. Such was the discriminatory law. Second, the Dalits or the Valmiki Samaj of Jammu and Kashmir was denied all basic rights. The biggest of all, that the children of the Valmiki community, when they grow up, they study and they apply for a job, they cannot apply for a government job in J&K. They can only be sweepers and cleaners in the Jammu and Kashmir government. This is what 370 and 35A was doing. Imagine, at that time when the 370 was prevalent last 2019 of India, we had such a discriminatory law where we saw complete open public discrimination against the Valmiki and the Dalit community of Jammu and Kashmir. These were people mainly who had transferred and traveled from Punjab decades ago and settled in Jammu and Kashmir, even when India was not completely independent. And their families had settled there, but they were given stepmotherly treatment. There was no basic fundamental right that was provided to them. 370 also did not guarantee all the central laws that were in place, be it right to information, education, minority rights, rights to people who were living in the border areas, rights to women, basic job-related rights, education, etc., was not prevalent. The central schemes under several Ayushman Bharat, etc., were not fully prevalent in Jammu and Kashmir only because of 370. And the biggest of all, the security, the law and order of Jammu and Kashmir was completely with the state. The Home Ministry and the Defense Ministry could not fully intervene or take a step because law and order was with the Jammu and Kashmir government. And even when the BJP and the PDP was in power, there were several steps taken, but could not happen. No change could happen at that particular time because the PDP had a larger say and it did not let anything happen. I remember myself, I think it was around 2017 or 2018, that I had reported when I was working with the Republic television about a corruption case, about a letter that was written by a politician to the governor at that time about corruption in the PWD department. And immediately when I reported this on television, I was the anchor and the reporter of that broadcast, I had a defamation case against me, even when the BJP PDP rule was there. And it was, I think, seeking damages of around 100 CR, if I'm not wrong. And immediately after that defamation, there was an arrest warrant that was issued against me only for that reporting. And then finally, obviously, we fought that case. And after 2 or 3 years, we won that case in the J&K High Court. And it was a very historic, bold statement and a judgment given by the Honorable Judge of the J&K High Court that this cannot be tolerated. A politician cannot bully a journalist in such a manner. And this is what was happening. Every time there was a question of a change, of peace, of assimilating Jammu and Kashmir fully and peacefully, integrate Jammu and Kashmir with India, there were these gangs of politicians who were hand in gloves with separatists and terrorists who did not want peace to prevail. Because Kashmir, but in particular, had become a conflict industry. And everybody had a share in this conflict industry. They did not want peace to prevail because if peace prevailed, what would have happened to their money bags? What would have happened to their bank accounts? What would have happened to the entire cottage conflict industry that I call, which is completely being attacked at this particular stage? So finally, we came to 2019, and you all remember what happened in 2019. On 14th of Feb in 2019, in Pulwama, Lethpura of South Kashmir, there was a suicide bombing by Adil Ahmed Dar, a Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist, and he blew himself up in front of a convoy of a CRPF. And more than 40 of our braveheart CRPF soldiers were martyred. They were killed in this draconian terror attack by the Pakistani Jaish-e-Mohammed. And I'm told, as per my sources, that the government of India on that particular day decided that not just would it take that there needs to be a strong response against Pakistan to this cowardly act, but there needs to be an internal change. There needs to be a resolve by all Indians, no matter what your politics is, no matter what your ideology is, no matter what your religion is, or your caste is, or where you are from. We need to stand together and convey to all Kashmiris and people from Jammu and Kashmir and Ladakh that you are Indians first. We stand by you. You have equal rights, and no special status can be given. All rights that are given to people in Karnataka, all rights that are given to people in West Bengal, all rights that are given to people in New Delhi, in Tamil Nadu, in Andhra Pradesh, in Telangana, anywhere, would be the same rights that are provided to people in Jammu and Kashmir. Why should there be, in fact, this kind of a stepmotherly treatment or a special treatment given to people there? And
Aditya,
finally, yeah, please.
we have our
Yes.
holiness. Yeah, we have our holiness into the studio.
Oh, okay. Okay. Then can we bring Shabri also? Yeah. Shabri இப்போ வந்துருவார்னு நினைக்கிறேன்.
நமஸ்காரம்.
That is fairly a good summary.
Thank you.
That I could see most of the Kashmiri Pandits who appear in our program. It's all in their fingertips. I think it is stored in their memory, etched in the memory, and people can talk about it just like that without any preparation.
Our mind is a history book now. And this is a history book that we will give to our future generations so that we remember and never forget.
I mean, some of the points you mentioned about this Valmiki and the Dalits, this is a big topic outside Kashmir,
And nobody knew. Nobody knew. When the Honorable Supreme Court of India heard it for the first time, they were shocked. They said there is so much about Dalits all across India, but when it comes to Jammu and Kashmir, nobody knew anything about it.
Now you've gone to the extent of fighting for minority rights for Kashmiri Pandits. I don't know whether you still qualify for that. That will come under some other...
Officially, we don't. Officially, even today, we don't qualify.
Right. Yeah.
We are hardly 1
now,
or 2%.
I've seen you in your bio, you mentioned about interviewing the Afghan vice president,
The
the
former vice
spy
president, yeah.
chief. It all
Yeah.
took place where? In
No,
Afghanistan?
no. Basically, what happened when Kabul, was taken over, he obviously knew me. So I had already sent him a message when Taliban took over, and he went into a hiding. So he called me from hiding after a few days. So he called only globally. He called 5 or 6 journalists, one from the BBC, one from US, and 2 or 3 in India. And then he spoke on phone. He didn't reveal his
Oh,
location.
okay.
Even today, nobody knows his location. But he spoke at length.
No, I was just going to ask you whether you travel to all those destinations. Like, you keep reading in the press about the journalists.
Yeah,
Scary
I mean,
situation.
I remember one of my first very horrific assignment was in Iraq, when you would remember when the ISIS was at its peak and Indians were kidnapped. Indians were abducted there in 2014, and there were two groups of Indians that were kidnapped. One was nurses from South India,
Right.
that were in one place, Mosul and Tikrit, and one was Sikh laborers who were kidnapped. So the nurses were rescued while I was there. I was in Baghdad, and they were brought back, but the Sikh laborers could not be rescued. So they were taken over by the ISIS, and they were finally killed. And after 2 or 3 years, we finally got DNA samples from there, whatever little remains that we could get. So 40 of our Sikh laborers were killed by the ISIS. So I spent
But
about,
all these are risky assignments, right? Because you can't say
yeah,
anything.
risky, but what happens is I obviously went there when I was 24. So I had this, kind of a passion and adrenaline rush within me that I really want to, prove something or, go for it. But what happens is that once you do it and once you come back, after a few years, you imagine that, it was actually a scary assignment. At that time, you don't think.
I
Uh,
I
mean,
was
getting
scared.
stuck in a
Obviously, I was scared.
cell, yeah, very,
Shankarji,
very tough. Yes.
Periva will be opening the camera in 15 to 20 minutes. Aditya
Oh,
ji can
okay.
continue his.
Yeah,
You
okay. We
can see
can
the private
continue
message.
in about
Yeah,
10,
please.
15 minutes. Okay.
Okay. Okay.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. So I was talking about Dalits and Valmikis and why there should be, different rights for different sets of people. If everyone is an Indian first, then why have a different kind of an approach? So come 2019, when Pulwama happened, and in response, after a few days, we did Balakot, already behind the back, behind corridors, silently, there was research happening on Article 370. And obviously, I cannot reveal a lot of details here, but I'll tell you that one of the senior people from the government called me and asked me about details about 370 and 35A, my opinion, and what I thought about it. And I said, it needs to go. But I also added that no political party can do this, because for 40 years, there is BJP who has been saying in its manifesto that we will do it. But no politician, no prime minister, no government has had the courage to actually do it. It has only been till now an election, plank. And that person told me, he was not a politician, that it will happen. 370 will go and 35A will go. And I started laughing. And I said that, I'll be very honest. I'll be the happiest in India if it happens. But I'm not sure. I'm not so sure that there will be a political will. And if there is a political will, there will be a security or a national kind of a plan that happens. So that person told me that you change my name. I'm giving you an assurity today that within the next 3 to 6 months, we will make it happen. But don't discuss this with anyone. I said, okay. Then I think within a month, the Home Minister called me, and the Home Minister told me that you go to Kashmir and you meet all the security chiefs there, and you meet the local public, etc. You visit a few places, and then you give us a report of what you feel about the security situation. I think this was around June in 2019. So I visited, and I was given a briefing by everyone. I met the governor, all the security, army, CRPF, police, BSF, intelligence agencies. And because I understand Kashmir, I named and shamed people. I gave a 7-page report of what actually is the problem without any kind of a bias. The roots of terrorism, the roots of separatism, where all the conflict cottage industry had actually been a terrible problem. and where we need to, as a nation, strike to change and bring that important change. So finally, I was happy that on 5th August 2019, the abrogation happened. And it was a very meticulously planned operation, because one needs to imagine that it is not something that was suddenly brought into parliament and it happened. There was an immense level of legal research that happened behind it, that it has to happen as per the law of the land. So first, that needed to be taken care of. The second most important problem was the security situation. This was happening at a time when the Amarnath pilgrimage was on. This was also happening at the peak of a tourist season. There were hundreds and thousands of Amarnath pilgrims and tourists out there, and you had to ensure their safe evacuation. And then there should not be a law and order issue or a terrorist attack while this is happening. Third of all, politically, they had to see that the opposition parties here in India do not create a problem and they are on the same page with the ruling government. And finally, they had to see the diplomatic and the narrative repercussions all across the world of how the world will react. And finally, of course, how Pakistan will react. Because the intelligence agencies had told the Prime Minister and the government of India that this is the right time to strike and this is the right time to do it, because Pakistan is not in a place or a situation to react to this situation. They will be completely dumbfounded. They will not know how to react to this situation. At much, they will go to United Nations or any multilateral forum. But militarily speaking, politically speaking, diplomatically speaking, they cannot take any harsh steps. And exactly what the intelligence agencies had told the Prime Minister happened. First few countries, very shockingly, who almost welcomed this 370 abrogation and said that we will not intervene, were Muslim countries. UAE, Maldives, Saudi Arabia. In fact, UAE and Saudi Arabia have been the giants of the OIC, the Organization of Islamic Countries. And these countries have been the closest to Pakistan for decades together. They get loans from Saudi and UAE, but Saudi and UAE decided to stand with India. They said, this is an internal affair. Why should we talk about it? Pakistan kept knocking the doors of the OIC, Saudi Arabia, UAE, but nothing happened. Yes, there were editorials that were written in New York Times, in BBC, in Washington Post, in Al Jazeera, attacking India, completely running a vested agenda campaign against New Delhi, that this is against rights and human rights and this and that. But the reality was not given by the Western press of how 370 was discriminatory against the women of Jammu and Kashmir, how 370 was discriminatory against the Valmikis and the Dalits, how the Kashmiri Hindus were completely violated. And can you imagine that in all these years of government being in Jammu and Kashmir, there was not a single Hindu, either from Jammu or Kashmir, who became the chief minister. There was not a single Ladakhi who became a chief minister. In fact, if you openly speak to any person in Jammu or Ladakh, no matter which political party he or she comes from, they will say the kind of discrimination and the stepmotherly treatment that they suffered. There was complete hegemony of the Kashmiri Sunni Muslims in Jammu and Kashmir. And there was no question of any kind of minority rights of Kashmiri Hindus or Jammu Dogras or the Sikh community or the Ladakhis. And the Ladakhis had been demanding that we have nothing to do with Jammu and Kashmir. Why don't you give us a union territory? We share nothing with you. We have a different culture. We have a different kind of a land. We have a different kind of approach towards things. And nothing that Ladakh has is similar to Jammu or Kashmir. And finally, that was given, that was granted, that was rightfully theirs. So a lot has changed. A lot has changed in Jammu and Kashmir, not just geographically and on the political map of India, but on ground as well. I'll be very honest. I obviously speak my mind, be it on social media or to the government. 370 abrogation does not mean that things will change overnight. It does not mean that 370 has gone and everything is hunky-dory and Hindus can settle back in Kashmir. There will be no terror attacks. Corruption will end overnight and everything will be okay. No. And 370 and terrorism are nothing together. They do not react to each other. 370 was a step that had to be taken politically and democratically by India for equality, to restore equality, to give people and citizens of Jammu and Kashmir their equal rights, and to break this kind of the bridge that had been set up, that we are temporarily with you, we have this special status, every time you do something and we will react. So this had to end, and this began actually in 2017, when the government actually gave a mandate to the National Investigative Agency to act against the separatists, the stone pelters, and the entire Hawala racket that used to run from Pakistan and between India. And I know, because I know several NI officers, and I was one of the first journalists to in fact know about how the NI raids will actually take place. And there were an entire flight of officers that was sent early morning at 5 a.m. and they raided simultaneously 40 locations, and nobody knew in Kashmir. And this was for the first time that such a step had been taken in decades together. So today, we see the Hurriyat Conference and the JKLF completely disbanded and destroyed in the dustbin of history. Gilani, of course, has passed away, but we see that the stone pelting that used to happen all across downtown in Navhata, in Lal Chowk, in Maisuma of Srinagar has completely ended. You must have seen for years on television screens the stone pelters outside the Jama Masjid attacking the security forces, the Jammu and Kashmir police, the CRPF. You must have seen that heads of those soldiers have been completely bursted from those stones. You must have seen vehicles of CRPF and police being completely attacked by stones, by rods, by cycles being thrown at them. That has completely changed. Since 2019, we do not see any kind of stone pelting either in Srinagar or any other district of Kashmir. And that is only because there has been action against these radical separatists, this Hawala racket that used to run, those conduits between the Hawala, between the separatists and Pakistan have been arrested. The kingpins of stone pelting who used to get 500 or 1,000 rupees or 2,000 rupees to organize these mob attacks have been completely arrested. And the radical ideology behind this, the Jamaat Islamists, mostly prevalent in South Kashmir, have also been attacked. Their properties have been attacked. They've been arrested, hundreds of them. The action that had to be taken place years ago has finally been taking place in the last 3 to 4 years. Can you imagine that stone pelters in Anantnag were rewarded and they became the relationship managers of J&K Bank? This is what the politicians of Jammu and Kashmir were doing. Jamaat-e-Islami radicals, Islamist radicals, who were hand in gloves with Hizbul Mujahideen and others, were given government jobs. And I have to say, unfortunately, even today, there are several Jamaat-e-Islami elements who are part of J&K government and J&K police. How many will you remove? How many will you overnight throw out? So every time in these last months and years, you have seen that the J&K CID and the J&K government are terminating people. Can you imagine that the sons of Hizbul Mujahideen chief Syed Salahuddin, who for last 35 years has been in Pakistan occupied Kashmir, were in government of India, were working in government of India, were being paid by government of India? Can you imagine Syed Ali Shah Gilani, the chief of Hurriyat, who actually started this poisonous campaign, who was the focus leader of all these terrorists and separatists, was at one point in time an MLA and used to get that pension of MLA and never stopped accepting that. Apart from that, his own grandson was in government of India and nothing changed. It's only last year or last year that they have been finally fired. So who in the government of India or in the government of J&K was providing this kind of a benefit? Because when I point fingers at Pakistan, when I point fingers at radical separatists and politicians of Jammu and Kashmir, I have to be a devil's advocate and question myself as well. That there were elements in the government of India who were also hand in gloves with this kind of a cottage industry that was happening. And this I'm not talking about today. I'm talking about 10 years, 15 years ago. Unfortunately, there were elements in the Indian intelligence agencies who were helping, guiding these radical separatists. And you'll be shocked that these radical separatists got flight tickets from Indian government. They got hotel stays by government of India. They got medical expenses in New Delhi and in US covered by Government of India. They got properties in South Delhi, in Haryana, in Bangalore, in Whitefield, in several other areas by Government of India. This is what was keeping them alive. Monthly payments, all the luxuries in the world, and some kind of luxuries that I can't even say in a very public and democratic audience. This is what the Indian intelligence agencies were doing. And finally, post 2014 and 2019, this completely game changed. And the entire history of these radical separatists and politicians completely changed. You would have seen on television Farooq Abdullah saying that you change my name if 370 is abrogated. You would have seen Mehbooba Mufti saying that not a single shoulder will be left in Kashmir to unfurl the tricolor if anything is done to 370. What happened? How many years has it been from abrogation? And what could these politicians do? And I feel sad for them. I, in fact, said that these politicians should not have been arrested for such a long time. I also campaigned that internet should not have been shut for such a long time. Yes, one understands that for some days or weeks you have done it on security reasons, but not for a year and a half, because students suffer, government employees suffer, professionals suffer, common man who has nothing to do with politics or separatism suffers. But tell me, my friends, that did a single Kashmiri come out when Mehbooba Mufti, Farooq Abdullah, and Omar Abdullah were arrested? Did we see any kind of a protest? Yesterday, when we saw in Punjab, many of you who follow news, that there is this new character, Amritpal Singh, who came out and he is on the path of Bindranwale. And the moment there was an FIR registered, thousands of his supporters came out, and he is not even a politician. He is not even a religious figure. But thousands of people came out, but what happened to this dynasty of Abdullahs and Muftis? Not a single Kashmiri. And when I walked around Gupkar Road and Lal Chowk and other places, Kashmiris used to tell me, some would say that India did right, India did wrong. But one thing that there was common sentiment was ki bahut acha hua. It happened very good that these people were arrested. Because the common sentiment there is that these people have amassed up so much of money and so much of properties and luxuries, and the common man has been suffering, which is the reality. I mean, the Gupkar gang, that term is being used. Many of you might have seen Gupkar Road if you have traveled to Kashmir. The elites stay there, apart from, of course, government offices, army, intelligence, and others. There are the elites of Jammu and Kashmir who stay there. And who has given them all these properties? What kind of a business were they running? What kind of an ancestral property do they have? Has there been any investigation into how they amassed so much of money? Who gave them all these properties? So this is the reality of Jammu and Kashmir. In these last 3 to 4 years, ever since the abrogation, the terrorism has come down. The violence has come down. Recruitment of terrorists, radicalization, to an extent has come down. I'm not again saying that radicalization has ended. I'm not saying that recruitment of terrorists has ended. It will take a lot of time. Because when Pakistan has been funding a lot of money, it is trying to search for other routes to send that money through, religious fundings or other stuff. Earlier, it used to be through trade routes that used to run through Uri, Chakoti, and other places. There were these bills, exaggerated bills that used to be there, and finally, money was pumped into terrorism. Now they are looking at other methods. Drugs are being used in a big way, both in North and South Kashmir, to not just influence the youth, the unemployed youth, but to have this drug terror money. Then, of course, the Khalistani terrorism, which was ended years ago. Pakistan has been trying its best. The ISI has a K2 strategy, Kashmir and Khalistan, to keep it burning, to keep something or the other happening so that, there are flames all across and India suffers immensely. But with the kind of state that Pakistan is in today, complete economic turmoil, security nightmare for them ever since the Taliban said that they will continue to attack them. And of course, politically, they are not stable as of now. Apart from Imran Khan and Shahbaz Sharif completely fighting over each other's neck, we have a conflict between the army and the political parties as well. So Pakistan will suffer, and it's their own karma that will come out to them. But in Jammu and Kashmir, I think that we are on the right path finally. As a Kashmiri, as an Indian first, I had never imagined in my life that 370 abrogation would happen. The day it happened, I changed my mind. Now I am a complete optimist. I think that anything can happen. And anything means that if Kashmiri Hindus or Hindus can return to Kashmir, I feel someday it could happen. It may not happen in my lifetime, it may happen after me, but it will happen. And we've seen, as I said, that radicalization has come down but not ended. And one has to realize, and I say this because I give guest lectures to CRPF and the army, that our policy in Jammu and Kashmir was to attack terrorists, kill terrorists, not terrorism. Our policy was to attack radicals, but not radicalization. So we have changed our policy a little, but there needs to be a cohesive consistency in this approach, that our fight is not against terrorists or individuals, it is against the menace of terrorism. Our fight is not against particular radical or radical preachers or radical Islamists. Our fight is against the entire radicalization that's happening. And even today, we see immense level of radicalization that is underway. And this is a vicious circle. A radical is converted into a hybrid terrorist. A teenager or 20 something loves to flaunt a gun in South Kashmir. And that is the problem. You have to change the entire mindset to bring a larger change in the society. I will not say that even today, when I travel to Kashmir, I feel completely safe. But when I visit Kashmir today, I feel a relative change. There is an eerie calm, but there is also a change. Law and order is not a problem. In fact, I will tell you, just last week, I was in Kashmir for a week. I was shooting on a documentary with the CRPF commandos in Srinagar. And I traveled from length and breadth of Srinagar. I went to the downtown, at one point in time, one of the most dangerous areas, Nauhata, and adjoining areas. I, of course, went to the Shankaracharya temple. I went to Yusmarg, where the moment we went there, it started snowing. So I freely traveled without any security. Usually I get security, but I did not take any security this time. And I traveled all across. But Pakistan is also frustrated. So it is devising new plans to target people. And this new plan over the last 2 years has been hybrid terrorism, which I just mentioned. And this hybrid terrorism is picking out radicals from the society. That radical could be a school teacher. That radical could be a shop owner. That radical could be any professional or just another person in your neighborhood in Kashmir. And they give him a weapon, a pistol or a grenade, and ask him to attack on a particular location. He does that and he vanishes because the police and the CRPF and the intelligence agencies and the army have no idea who this hybrid terrorist is. Because he's a radical, he's not a category A, category B, category C terrorist. He's not mentioned in any of the books. So this has become a huge problem now. And their targets are very clear. It's not only security forces now. It is the minority Hindus. We've seen several of them, PM package employees, uh, uh, bank managers, etc., laborers, carpenters, fruit sellers, golgappa sellers. No matter if you're Hindu or Muslim, they are being attacked. There were several carpenters, laborers, etc., from Punjab, from UP, from Bihar, from West Bengal, who've been continuously attacked and killed. So they have devised this new plan. We had a Sikh school principal, Supinder Kaur, who was killed on the outskirts of Srinagar. We had a medical professional, a chemist, Makhanlal Bindru, who never left Kashmir. He was always there. He was serving the local population of Muslims. But he was brutally killed just 500 meters away from the SSP Srinagar's office on point blank range. We had Rahul Bhatt, who was working in the government as a PM package employee in Badgam. He was killed. We have had 3 attacks on the same family of Kashmiri Pandits, the Bhatt family in Shopian of South Kashmir in the last 1.5 years. So minorities are still a target. There might not be a massacre that used to happen until 2004, and there have been several massacres, from Sangrampura to Vandahama to Nadimarg to Gul, where so many of Kashmiri Hindus were lined up in midnight and they were killed, including toddlers. That massacre may not be happening today, but there are the selective targeting of Hindus, of anyone who is seen aligned with India, anyone who is seen against jihad, against this La ilaha illallah ideology of Sharia law in Kashmir. But there is a positive change, which is trying to bring development, employment, better opportunities, better tourism in Kashmir. And this consistency from government and other stakeholders needs to be there continuously to bring in a constant change. Corruption has been a huge problem as well, and I hope the government of India will take more steps because corruption is a problem all across the country. The J&K is no different. But because conflict has been there, wherever across the globe there is conflict, corruption increases automatically. So there needs to be this policy of Government of India which has changed. And I'm happy to tell you that the tourism figures last year in Jammu and Kashmir have been the biggest in last 10 to 12 years. Even this year, I am expecting hundreds and thousands of people from all across the country to in fact travel. And in fact, temple tourism has been one of the biggest assets for Jammu and Kashmir. We have such ancient temples in South Kashmir, in North Kashmir, of course, the Adi Shankaracharya temple, and we have so many pilgrims from down south, from Tamil Nadu to Kerala to Karnataka, Andhra, who are traveling regularly. And through this conversation that I did today, I would request all of you to visit Kashmir with your family members. And I can assure you that tourists or pilgrims from all across India are targeted.
ஒரு நிமிஷம் அப்படியே நிறுத்துங்க. டக்குன்னு பெரியவா வந்துட்டேன்.
சபரி ஆரம்பிக்கலாம்.
நமஸ்காரம் பெரியவா. ஓம் குரு பிரம்மா குரு விஷ்ணு குரு தேவோ மகேஸ்வரः குரு சாட்சாத் பரபிரம்மா தஸ்மை ஸ்ரீ குரவே நமः. ஓம் ஆனந்தோ பிரம்மே திவ்யதானாத் ஆனந்தாத்யேவ கல்விமானி பூதானி ஜாயந்தே ஆனந்தேன ஜாதானி ஜீவந்தி ஆனந்தம் பிரயந்த்யபிசம்விசந்தீதி சைஷா भार्गवी विद्या परमेभ्यो मन् प्रतिष्ठिता य एवं वेद प्रतिष्ठति अन्नवानन्नादो भवति महान् भवति प्रजया बृहद्ब्रह्मवर्चसेन महान् कीर्त्या न कर्मणा न प्रजया धनेन त्यागेनैके अमृतत्वमानशुः परेण नागन्निहितं गुहायां विभ्राजते तज्जनयो विशन्ति वेदांत विज्ञान सनिश्चितार्थाः संन्यास योगाद्यतयः शुद्धसत्त्वाः ते ब्रह्मलोके तु परान्तकाले परामृताः परिमुच्यन्ते सर्वे दक्रं विपापं परमेश्वरभूतं यत्पुण्डरीकं परमध्यलग्नस्थं तत्राभिरग्रं गगनं विशोकस्तस्मिन् यदन्तर्सगुपासितव्यं यो वेदादौ स्वरप्रोक्तो वेदान्तेन प्रतिष्ठितः तस्य प्रगतिरस्य परस्वमहेश्वरः स्वस्ति श्रीमदखिल भूमण्डलालङ्कारस्तयस्य विषत्कोटि देवता सेवितः श्री कामाक्षी देवी सनाथ श्रीमते काम्बरनाथ श्री महादेवी सनाथ श्री हस्तगिरिनाथ साक्षात्कार परमाधिष्ठान सत्यावृत नामाङ्कित काञ्ची दिव्य क्षेत्रे शारदा मठस्थितानाम् अतुलितसार्गसाधर्य कमलात्मकामिनी धम्मिल संपुल्ल मल्लिका मालिका निश्चन्त मकरन्द हरे सौमस्तिक मान्यगम्भ विजन्मकानन्द निर्महिषी मण्डलानाम् अनवरतात् वेद विद्या विनादर्शिकानाम् निरन्तरालङ्कदेकत शान्तिदान्ति भोम्नाम् सकल भुवन चक्र प्रतिष्ठापकरी चक्र प्रतिष्ठा विख्यातेष्वलङ्कृतानाम् निखिल पाषण्डकण्टकोद्घाटनेन विशेषित वेद वेदान्त मार्ग प्रतिष्ठापकाचार्याणाम् श्रीमद् परमहंसवर्य श्रीमद् शंकर भगवत्पादाचार्याणाम् अधिष्ठाने सिंहासनाभिषिक्त श्रीमद् श्रीधरेन्द्र सरस्वती संयमीन्द्राणाम् अन्ते वासवज्ञ श्रीमद् जयेन्द्र सरस्वती श्रीपादानां वन्दे वासवज्ञ श्रीमद् शंकर विजयेन्द्र सरस्वती श्रीपादानां च शरणयोः सप्रश्रयं साञ्जलिवन्दन्त नमस्कुर्मः।
ஆன் பண்ணிட்டேன். சங்கர் சார் நீங்க பேசலாம்.
நமஸ்காரம்.
நமஸ்காரம் பெரியவா.
விஷ்ணு சங்கர் ஆதி சாஸ்திரிகள் இன்னைக்கு பூர்ண கும்பத்துக்கு ஜாயின் பண்ணியிருக்காங்க.
நமஸ்காரம் பெரியவா.
இவர் யாரு?
அது சபரி, அது சங்கர், அது விஷ்ணு இல்லையா?
மூணு பேர்.
மூணு பேர் பாத்திருக்கேன்.
கவுல் கவுல் சொல்லுங்க, நீங்க சொல்லுங்க, சங்கரன் பேசுங்க.
ஓகே, தேங்க்ஸ் சபரி. அப்புறம் பார்க்கலாம். நமஸ்காரம் பண்ணிட்டு இல்லையா?
படியா. நமஸ்காரம் சொல்லி.
நல்லா சொன்னா. நல்லா. சிவனை பத்தி ஒண்ணு சொல்லுங்க.
சிவனை பத்தி ஒண்ணு சொல்றேன். உங்களை சிவனை பத்தி சொல்றேன்.
नमस्तेस्तु भगवन् विश्वेश्वराय महादेवाय त्र्यम्बकाय त्रिपुरान्तकाय त्रिकालाग्निकालाय कालाग्निरुद्राय नीलकण्ठाय मृत्युञ्जयाय सर्वेश्वराय सदाशिवाय श्रीमन्महादेवाय नमः।
ठीक है।
சங்கர் சார் நீங்க கொஞ்சம் இவரை பத்தி நீங்க பேசுங்க, இன்ட்ரோடியூஸ் பண்ணுங்க.
ஆதித்ய ராஜ் கவுல்.
பெரியவா ஆதித்ய ராஜ் கவுல் வந்து இப்ப 370 முன்னாடி எப்படி சிச்சுவேஷன், அதுக்கப்புறம் எப்படி எல்லாம் நிலைமை மாறி இருக்கு அப்படிங்கறத பத்தி இவ்வளவு நேரம் எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ணேன். ஆதித்யராஜ் கவுலோட அம்மா முன்னாடியே நம்ம ப்ரோக்ராமுக்கு வந்திருக்கா, அத்வைதவர்தினி கவுல். காஷ்மீரி சைவேசம் பத்தி முன்னாடி ஒரு வருஷம் முன்னாடி இதே டயத்துல ஆக்சுவலா டாக்டர் நாகசுவாமி ரெக்கமெண்ட் பண்ணி ரொம்ப ஏர்லி ஸ்டேஜ்ல நம்ம ப்ரோக்ராமுக்கு வந்திருந்தா. இவர் நல்லா இப்ப எல்லாத்தையும் ஒரு சம்மேஷன் மாதிரி கம்ப்ளீட்டா எப்படி இருந்தது முன்னாடி, இப்ப எப்படி சிச்சுவேஷன் நிலைமை இம்ப்ரூவ் ஆயிட்டு வருது அப்படிங்கறத பத்தி எக்ஸ்பிளைன் பண்ண.
நம்ம ஆரம்பிச்சிடலாம்.
ठीक है, अच्छा है। आदित्य राज कौल,
नमस्कार।
हम प्रसन्न हैं जो कश्मीर मूलतः तरंगिणी के द्वारा मार्तांड संहिता के द्वारा भृगु संहिता, ऐसे जो पुराण प्रसिद्ध स्थान है कश्मीर
जी,
जैसे काशी प्रसिद्ध है, कांची प्रसिद्ध है, वैसे कश्मीर भी प्रसिद्ध तीर्थ स्थान है। उसमें तीर्थ स्थान मार्तांड है, अवंती स्वामिन है, अवंतीश्वरा है, शारिका मंदिर है, जो खीर भवानी है, अनेक स्थान है। हमने प्रताप सिंह के पीरियड में पंडित विश्वनाथ शर्मा के द्वारा जो कांड का किताब पब्लिश किया था उसको हमने रीप्रिंट करवाया।
जी
लौगाक्षी गृह्य सूत्र जो
जी
कश्मीर पंडितों के लिए रीति रिवाज के लिए संस्कार, जन्म जब पैदा होता है, जन्म जब शुरू होता है, तब से जो कर्मकांड का विषय होता है के लिए दो मुख्य संत है, गोबिल और तिरुपति में एक वैदिक यूनिवर्सिटी सौ 5 उम्र पहले जयेंद्र सरस्वती महाराज जी ने
ऑडियो
75 के चैप्टर हिंदी ओके
75
75 अमृतोत्सव 75 अपना पूज्य महाराज जयेंद्र सरस्वती महाराज जी ने स्वयं जम्मू गए, वहां जाके काशीनाथ हंडू जो 105 थे, वो पंडित सबके विद्वान, उनको सम्मान का कार्यक्रम किया था महाराज श्री ने। वैसे
जी
कला के संबंध में, संस्कृत भाषा के संबंध में अपना संबंध ये अच्छा हो रहा है। बहुत साल से ही कांची पीठ का और कश्मीर का एक संबंध हो रहा है। अपना पूज्य चंद्रशेखरेंद्र सरस्वती महाराज जी ने कश्मीर के बारे में बहुत उनको जानकारी है और काफी बड़े बड़े लोग जाके उनका दर्शन किया है। वैसे कश्मीर के साथ उनका अच्छा संबंध है, कश्मीर हिस्ट्री के साथ अच्छा संबंध है, कश्मीर जनता के बारे में भी उन्होंने जब 80s में जो दुर्घटना हुआ, जो कष्ट हुआ, तब भी जो चेन्नई के कुछ कश्मीरी लोग महाराज जी के पास आए थे, उनको महाराज जी ने आशीर्वचन और आश्वासन दिया है। वैसे कश्मीर के प्रति बहुत उनका प्रेम स्नेह है, दया है, ऐसे होता है। अभी 2-3 विषय है। आपका जो भाषण के बारे में ये शंकर जी ने कहा है, ठीक है। अभी जो भाषण का सीरियस है 75 अमृतोत्सव 75 का भाषण आपका है। अभी हमने 97 में हम आए कश्मीर, अपना गुरुजी के साथ जयेंद्र सरस्वती महाराज श्री और कुछ क्षेत्र का दर्शन किया और वहाँ चंद्रमौलीश्वर गाय का दूध प्रबंध का और बिल्व पत्र का सब प्रबंध हुआ, विशेष बंद हुआ, इस वहाँ हम आ सके। तब हमने कुछ मंदिर वगैरह दूर से देखा। तब से जो हमारा जो अर्थात शंकराचार्य जी का जन्म दिवस पर वहाँ हम कुछ कार्यक्रम कर रहे हैं, एक सप्ताह का कार्यक्रम कर रहे हैं। वहाँ संकल्प भी करते हैं, वहाँ शांति हो, सुरक्षा हो, होगा। एक भी व्यापार जो अग्नि होती उनको भी हम सरकार ये तो
We have sometimes we get into these audio
Yeah.
issues. Network
Yeah.
also, it's in the remote area of Andhra Pradesh.
Yeah.
But he was able to talk to you a
Of
few
course.
things about Jayendra Saraswati Swamigal you mentioned
Yeah.
previously. I think when you visited, that must have been
Yeah.
the time.
Of course, Jayendraji was there. Yeah.
So I don't know whether they will come back again. Yeah, I think
Yeah, I think
it's.
they're trying to connect.
But yeah,
ठीक है ठीक है दूसरा ठीक है अब वाला फॉर्मेट ठीक है अभी सुनता है ठीक है
जी जी जी
हाँ ठीक है जो कश्मीरियों का जो वेद होता है कृष्ण यजुर्वेद और सामवेद के है कृष्ण यजुर्वेद में कठशाखा के होते हैं लौगाक्षी मुनि का अनुसरण करने वाले हैं। इधर जो है दक्षिण भारत में तैत्तिरीय शाखा कृष्ण यजुर्वेद है और आपस्तंभ महर्षि का अनुसरण करते हैं। वहाँ सामवेदी कुछ परिवार है कश्मीरियों का, वो वहाँ गोबिल मुनि का अनुसरण करते हैं। इसलिए गोबिल मुनि और लौगाक्षी मुनि उसको जो उपदेश है उसको प्रचार करने के लिए हमारा ये सुझाव होता है अभी कश्मीरी कल्चर को प्रोटेक्ट करना। जो कश्मीरी का जो स्क्रिप्ट है, लिपि है, शारदा लिपि है, वहाँ का आप लोग जो घर में बात करते हैं वो भाषा है और वहाँ आपका जो परंपरा है, जो अखरोट उपयोग करना, हल्दी उपयोग करना, चावल उपयोग करना, जैसे आपका जो रीति रिवाज है, आपका जो मंगल है उसको कैसे प्रोटेक्ट करना, इसलिए हम ये कल्चर कश्मीर जो 8 लाख पॉपुलेशन है जो कश्मीर में है, जम्मू कश्मीर में है या मुंबई में होंगे या अमेरिका में है, लैंग्वेज और रिलीजियस प्रैक्टिसेस जो वहाँ का मंदिर तीर्थ स्थान का करना कैसे करना सोच रहे हैं। उसमें इधर जो मॉडल है तमिलनाडु आंध्र प्रदेश में एक मॉडल हमने वहाँ सीबीएसई एजुकेशन होगा, उसके साथ साथ अपना कल्चर का भी एजुकेशन, सेक्युलर जनरल एजुकेशन भी वो पढ़ेंगे, अपना कल्चर का भी एजुकेशन वो पढ़ेंगे। वैसे महिलाओं के लिए भी किया है, पुरुष के लिए भी किया है। गौरी मम्बा मंबुरु हाक्षी ममीडे, जो आपका कल्चर होता है, ज्येष्ठाष्टमी होता है, जो भी है, ये सब प्रोटेक्ट कर काम कर के सूचना पीढ़ी ऐसे आते हैं कि एक साल हो अलग अलग लोग हिंदी करते हैं तो और साथ अपना कल्चर करने ये कल्चरल
I think we lost again.
Yeah.
हम थोड़ा समय के बाद अभी बात करेंगे, अगर कुछ हो तो अभी सिटी अभी रूरल में है, वो बात कर रहे हैं, ठीक है। वैसे उसके लिए एक कल्चरल विलेज कैसे होना, ये आपका भी आइडिया चाहिए। उसमें आप लोग मीटिंग करके, कश्मीरी सब मीटिंग करके सुझाव देना। इससे क्या है, भावी पीढ़ी जो है, आगामी पीढ़ी जो है, वो कल्चर को भी अनुसरण कर सकते हैं, प्रैक्टिस कर सकते हैं। साथ साथ आधुनिक युग में इंजीनियरिंग, मेडिसिन भी पढ़ना, ये भी कल्चर भी प्रोटेक्ट करना, इसके लिए रिसर्च सेंटर करना है। वो कैसे करना, ये मुख्य विषय हमको लगता है। बाकी जो है सरकार के द्वारा जो कुछ हो रहा है ठीक है, और प्राइवेट एनजीओ के द्वारा कुछ हो रहा है, जो कश्मीरी का अनुरागी है, प्रेमी है, जो कुछ करते हैं उनके द्वारा जो हो रहा है वो तो होता रहेगा। वो उनका जो भाव है वैसे वो करेंगे। परिस्थिति भी ये होता है। ये कल्चर को प्रोटेक्ट करने में एक अच्छा इंस्टीट्यूशन हमको अच्छे स्थान पर करना है, उसमें शामिल होना है। कश्मीरी बच्चे सब उसमें शामिल हो करके अपना जो अध्यात्म विद्या है, जो उपासना हो, जो भक्ति हो, अपना लिटरेचर हो, कविता हो, उनका पेंटिंग हो, उनका जो भी रिसर्च मेथोडोलॉजी हो, क्योंकि एजुकेशन और मेडिसिन में आप लोगों ने बहुत किया है। जम्मू कश्मीर में जो पढ़ाई के क्षेत्र में और मेडिसिन में और एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में, तीन में भी आप लोगों ने 100 वर्ष पहले वो उससे पहले से आप लोग बहुत किया है। इसलिए आपका जो अनुभव है वो सकारात्मक रूप में कश्मीर के लिए भविष्य में उपयोगी होना, उसके लिए वो जो देश में प्राचीन जो संस्कृति है वो कश्मीरी संस्कृति है, उसको संरक्षण करना। अन्य क्षेत्र के लोगों का, जो भी मध्य भारत के हो, दक्षिण भारत के हो, पूर्व भारत के हो, वो सभी लोगों को, पश्चिम भारत के हो, सभी लोगों का ये भी दायित्व होता है। इसलिए आपके साथ शामिल होकर के आपका जो रीति रिवाज है, आपका जो विश्वास है, आपका जो पूजा पद्धति है, आपका जो व्रत महोत्सव करने का जो पद्धति है, उसको कायम रखने के लिए वो पुस्तक में होना अलग बात है, वो प्रैक्टिस में होने के लिए क्या करना है, क्या कर सकते हैं, वो सरकार का भी मदद कैसे लेना और प्राइवेट का भी मदद कैसे लेना, उद्योगपतियों से भी बात करके, ये सब बाहर का विषय है। पहले आपका मेंबर्स जो होते हैं, पॉपुलेशन जो मेंबर्स है, उनको पार्ट टाइम ट्रेनिंग देना, फुल टाइम ट्रेनिंग देना, उसमें उसको जीवित रखना, उसके लिए कैसे करना, ये मुख्य विषय आज का होता है। इसलिए ऐसे अमृतोत्सव का जो व्याख्यान माला है, इसमें 75 का जो व्याख्यान माला आपका रखा है, ये चिंतन करने के लिए आज सोचा था। ये हमने ये बताया। आजकल हम आंध्र प्रदेश में है, वैसे कश्मीर के साथ हमारा जो जो भाव है ऐसे होता है। आप लोग सोच करके एक बार व्यक्तिगत इधर आके सब लोग आशीर्वाद जो कश्मीरियों उत्तर संस्कृति को अनेक हम लोगों ने आपकी श्रद्धा है।
I think the rural area must be,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
well connected. So
yeah,
we'll do one thing, Aditya Rajji. You have to come back to our program another time.
yeah.
There I see a lot of comments there. Never I've seen like this. People have written so many things on the site. I could. We don't have much time now. Yeah, it's
ठीक है,
good.
ठीक है, ठीक, वही बात। हाँ, इधर जो हमने दक्षिण भारत में जो एजुकेशन मॉडल किया है, वो एक बार आप आकर के देखना। चेन्नई, बेंगलुरु इत्यादि में हमने किया है। वहाँ देखने के बाद आपका जो भी राय होगा, वो भी सब लोग उनसे चर्चा करके एक एक्शन प्लान, एक सकारात्मक कंस्ट्रक्टिव कल्चरल बिल्डिंग ये करने के लिए, समाज निर्माण करने के लिए जो हो सकता है वो सब लोग शामिल हो करके करना। भगवान का कृपा से, अपने महाराज का कृपा से समस्त कश्मीरियों का भी सुख शांति और विकास होने के लिए हम भगवान से प्रार्थना करेंगे। हर हर शंकर, जय जय शंकर। आप एक बार प्रत्यक्ष में आइएगा। हाँ,
जी
कभी बैठ के बात करेंगे। हाँ, कभी बैठ के बात
जी
करेंगे।
जी
हाँ,
मेरे को
करेंगे।
बहुत अच्छा लगा कि आपका आशीर्वाद मिला। और 20 साल पहले भी मैं आपके मिला था, और जयेंद्र
अच्छा,
सरस्वती जी और आपसे दिल्ली आए थे आप, और मैं बहुत
आए
छोटा
ना,
था।
आए ना, कामाक्षी मंदिर को
तो,
आए। हाँ,
हाँ, तो
हाँ,
आपका आशीर्वाद उस वक्त लिया था।
अच्छा, अच्छा, ठीक है,
कमरे के
अच्छा है।
अंदर हम आए थे और आपका आशीर्वाद लिया
कहाँ?
था,
दिल्ली में।
जी
दिल्ली में
जी
अच्छा है। दिल्ली में अच्छा है। अभी दोबारा आइएगा। अभी तो और
बिल्कुल
भी अनुभव है। अभी तो
जी
आपका और भी अनुभव है,
जी
और भी क्षमता है अभी।
जी
आपका जो बाहर बाहर का अनुभव है, वो कश्मीरियों के लिए कैसे उपयोग कर सकते हैं,
जी
ये भी चर्चा करेंगे। ये
बिल्कुल
हमको ये मुख्य विषय ऐसे लगा है अभी तो। बाकी तो काम सबके द्वारा, मीडिया के द्वारा, सरकार के द्वारा कुछ हो रहा है। पर अभी हमारा जो फोकस है, ये लीनेज, लैंग्वेज एंड जो भी लाइफस्टाइल को प्रोटेक्ट करना कैसे कश्मीरियों का,
बिल्कुल
उसके लिए हम क्या कर सकते हैं, उसके बारे में आप वो शंकर जी से बात करके अपना
जी
एजुकेशन सिस्टम देखिएगा, और कहाँ कर
जी
सकते हैं, कैसे कर सकते हैं, वो कुछ काम शुरू करेंगे। हाँ, ठीक है। हाँ, अच्छा
जी
हो।
जी गुरुदेव
नारायण, ठीक है।
नमः।
हर शंकर, हर हर शंकर, ठीक है। 20 வருஷம் முன்னாடி வந்திருக்கீங்க।
Your audio.
I guess that is the best we can have today with.
Absolutely. No, we were blessed by his presence. Even though he was traveling in interiors, he could join. It means a lot.
No, but his schedules are so tight, and
Yeah.
getting this organized is so difficult also.
Yeah.
And while traveling, it happens. Last time when Archana Kokru joined from US,
Yeah.
that day the same thing in the we had in the van, but that worked very well that day. Maybe the
Okay.
connectivity also.
Okay.
So what we would do now, we will schedule another program for you. We
Sure.
will, with all this 370 briefing that you gave,
Yeah.
there are a lot of
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
I just wanted to close by having only one slide I prepared, which I'll show to you,
Sure.
which I think very much in line with. This is actually in Tamil.
Okay.
The reason why I put this is our Tamil newspaper, Dinamalar, gives a very good coverage of Kashmir. Now,
Okay.
as you see, this is Devendra Fadnavis and Amit Shah. There are three things here I wanted to talk about. It says 1.8 crore tourists visited last year.
Hmm.
That is close to a right figure.
Yes, absolutely. And this year, even more will visit.
And then he also talked about $18 million of investment coming into Kashmir.
Yes, that has been pledged.
This is one. And most important, he says 80% of terrorism come down. Ever since Modi came to power, Kashmir terrorism has gone down by 80%. These are the three important points here, which I thought is very important for people to understand and hear from somebody like you, who is who is covering the ground realities.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, terrorism has, as I elaborated, it has come down significantly, but we should not sleep over it. That does not mean that things have changed permanently. It's a vicious cycle. There are gaps, there's silence, but silence always does not mean peace. Silence sometimes means that there could be worse that we should prepare for. So I feel that we are on a positive path. Great initiatives have been taken, which were unthinkable. These are historic steps, and perhaps many in India do not realize the kind of historic steps these are. But decades from now, this would be spoken about. That this historic step was taken. So 50 years from now, that transformation resulted only because of this step. So I feel that still we have a great amount of unfortunate radicalization in Kashmir, and which is because of Pakistan's sponsored terrorism and radicalization. It will take a lot of efforts. It will take a lot of consistency, both from the government and the common people, to eradicate this menace completely. And on the other hand, as I said, Pakistan's karma is making them unfortunately bleed. We do not mean evil for anyone, but unfortunately, Pakistan is suffering and will continue to suffer. And as I said, Hillary Clinton had said in 2011 that when you keep snakes in your backyard, they will not only attack your neighbors and bite your neighbors. Someday they will bite you as well. And this is what is happening for Pakistan. They tried to bite us in Kashmir, but now today, the same terror groups that they supported and nourished for all these years are attacking Pakistanis. And Pakistan is unable to counter that. So we have to keep that in mind and the geopolitical situation in mind. But I think the government of India and the democracy of India, the citizens of India have taken this resolve that Jammu and Kashmir is an integral part of the country, not only something that the Parliament of India said, but every Indian believes in this thought. So the transformation has begun, but it is for all of us, not just Kashmiris, but each and every Indian to contribute in this. So that is why I now request everyone to visit Kashmir with your family someday, as a pilgrim or as a tourist, but as an Indian first. And be proud of the heritage. And there is an immense level of history. Adi Shankaracharya ji and many other saints and sages have worked tremendously to keep this heritage alive. And it's on us now to not just keep it alive, but keep it flourishing.
Thank you very much. Maybe we'll do one program from Kashmir.
Absolutely, from Kashmir or from the Mutt. I would love to visit the mutt and seek blessings as well someday, if it is destined. And certainly, now I've spoken about 370 and violence and the negative part. Next time we will speak about future and what all is in store, what all you and me and all of us Indians can dream and seek to achieve, not just in Jammu and Kashmir, but across India.
With that, we'll conclude today's session. Thank you very much for your time and patience with all the audio we had. And we plan to meet sometime in April or May.
Thank you, Shankar. Thank you so much.
Okay, viewers, it was a long session today, and I could see a lot of comments here with so many nice things written. And I wanted to take all this with Aditya Raj ji, but unfortunately, we are running short of time. It's now more than an hour today. We usually conclude by 1 hour. Today, it got extended. Also, we had the blessing of His Holiness and His Anugrah Bhashanam. We'll plan to continue with Aditya Rajji sometime soon, April or so, where we will address all these questions. I also had a lot of points to discuss with him. So we'll take this up. So we'll continue the same 370, the future after 370. We'll have something planned soon. I want to thank Kanchi Mutt staff for working so hard for the connectivity today, in spite of all the poor network around that area. Want to thank VDSP for streaming support on Dinamalar, which gave wide coverage of today's program, and also anything on Kashmir, we get to read from Dinamalar. Other Kanji Mutt channels, Facebook, YouTube, and Kamakodi.tv for all the coverage. We, as mentioned, we will definitely meet sometime in April and continue Aditya Raj Kaul's program on 370. Jai Jai Shankara, Hara Hara Shankara.